Hey all, and welcome to Geek Freaks. I am Frank, and today is a single player episode. So you get to hear just me, and we're going to do this NPR style. In this episode, we're going to be talking about a video game studio that collapsed in just 1 week, and the new studio that rose in its ashes. We're going to be discussing the PlayStation 5 and that monster price tag. We have the new big bad for Venom: The Last Dance. He's very big, he's very bad, and he might have a big impact on the MCU. We're going to go over those Emmys, some of the biggest winners and why they're winners, and we're going over Flappy Bird because, of all things, Flappy Bird has a controversy around it. Who knew? We're going to dig into that as well. Lastly, I have an interview with Elee and Ash, two professional cosplayers. They're going to tell us all about the hard work that goes behind their incredible costumes. By the end of that conversation, I promise, you have a newfound respect for all those amazing cosplays you see at your local conventions. Before we get started on that, let's dig into some of the news around the network. We have the premiere of Outlast Podcast Season 11 this week. Join along with us as you watch Survivor and then join Outlast Podcast the day after. Challenge Accepted just did WandaVision, and we'll be covering every episode of Agatha All Along as they release every Wednesday. Who's Got Next Game Podcast just finished their Game Boy Advanced tournament. I was personally very upset by who they knocked out, and we voiced it over on Discord where you can join and talk to the guys as well. And Fandom Portals dug into D&D. Aaron is, in my opinion, a D&D master, so hearing Aaron talk about D&D is so fantastic. It just got me hyped, guys, so check out Fandom Portals as well. All the links will be in the description and our link tray. Lastly, we have 5 copies of Halo Season 2 on Blu-ray to give out to you guys, thanks to Paramount. All you have to do is submit a review that you've done for any of our podcasts, and if you've already reviewed it, you can just send a picture of it, and you'll be entered to win one of these 5 Blu-rays. It's US only, unfortunately, but we have another contest coming up next month that'll be international. So if you're one of our international fans, don't worry, your contest is coming soon. All right, let's go ahead and dig into all the news from around the geekdom. One of the big stories I'm excited to talk about today is the fact that we have proof that Knull, a big bad for Venom, is showing up in Venom 3, Venom: The Last Dance. We had a new trailer, and with Knull showing up, that kind of gives us an idea of what the story will be. He's not in there very long, it's like at the 50-second mark, but you see Knull sitting on his throne, and then you see a close-up on the side of his face. And a lot of people are wondering, who is this guy? Why is Venom suddenly afraid of him? Well, I'm going to dig into who he is, and then we're going to talk about why this trailer and why the inclusion of Knull in this new movie has sparked a question, and I took it to threads. We have your guys' response. I'm very interested in that as well. So let's first dig into who is Knull. He was created by writer Donny Cates, my personal favorite comic book writer, and artist Ryan Stegman. Knull first appeared in the comics in 2018. He's known as the God of the Abyss. He's also referenced oftentimes as like the God of the Symbiotes. He existed before the universe even began, predating even Celestials. When the Celestials brought light into the void, Knull was enraged. He felt like this is actually a personal attack on him. He then created his first symbiote weapon, the all-black Necrosword. And with this was able to decapitate a Celestial, which was like just not even thought of before. If the sword all black sounds familiar to you, it's because we've already talked about it before. It's the sword that Gore the God Butcher uses later on. Now, the act of beheading a Celestial led to the birth of the symbiotes. He was banished, and in the darkness, he just started building up his symbiote army. Eventually, his own symbiotes turned against him, and they imprisoned him into their hive mind in the center of like a planet of symbiotes. Of course, Knull, fueled by hatred for light and life, broke out and straight up invaded Earth in one of the best comic book stories ever from 2020 called The King in Black. It's phenomenal. Again, Donny Cates. When he invaded with a symbiote army, he overpowered the heroes, including the Avengers, X-Men, Fantastic Four, all the big dogs. Eddie Brock's Venom played a crucial role in this, including his family too. So it's not just Eddie. So it was like all Venom unite. It was really fun. Now, Knull being introduced into this movie also somewhat introduces him into the MCU as well. Like we already have his weapon, right? Through Thor, Love and Thunder with Gore the God Butcher. And Venom has appeared in an MCU movie through Spider-Man. It's a cameo, but I'm still counting it. Knull is the kind of villain that could be a huge threat for all of the Avengers. As I was mentioning before, he actually took them out. But I really hope they give it time. Yes, we're introducing him here, but I myself and a lot of other people don't take the Venom movies very seriously or like their impact on the wider MCU. Then later on, when Venom is in the MCU proper, after Secret Invasion, we could start getting hints of this symbiote invasion coming from the top. Like, there's dragons, guys. Symbiote dragons show up. It's so freaking cool. Like, let's get those teasing out the fact that Knull is returning for his invasion. Venom could be going around warning people. It could be the beginning of a long story arc that turns Venom into a good guy. Nowadays in the comic books, Venom, oftentimes is more good than bad. And to justify that, you would have to do something big like King in Black. We have a lot of world-ending villains out there that could replace Doctor Doom or be the next, Thanos is what we're basically saying. Knull is a relatively new villain, but he is that big of a threat that he could actually be one of those villains. As for the context of Venom 3, the idea of Venom facing off against his own creator adds like this deeply personal layer to the story. Eddie and Venom's relationship is pretty solid at this point, right? But now you're adding this outside influence where Eddie has to face the truth. If he loses Venom in this fight, then it's the end of the world. And so maybe the best thing is for Eddie to go away too. The stakes are very high, probably the highest they've ever been, even higher than with Carnage. And I want to know how much All Black's going to be making a big deal in this movie. One of my favorite things about All Black is during its creation, Knull was hammering it out, like forging it out. And the ringing sound is the reason that for Venom and symbiotes alike, sound is their weakness, is the ringing from when he was hammering out the All Black sword. It's just like a small fact that I freaking love. I wonder if we'll see any of that in this, because we know already through the Venom movies, through Spider-Man 3, that symbiotes are weak to sound. It's already been established. Let's give them a reason for that. I'm pretty optimistic. Tom Hardy consistently delivers a fun Eddie Brock. Adding a villain like Knull is going to just elevate this whole thing. There's no doubt. If done right, Venom: The Last Dance could be not just satisfying conclusion to the trilogy, but the launch pad to bring Knull into the MCU as a very big villain. But that's not where this story ends. Let's go to the creators. Now, after they revealed Knull's going to be in this movie, of course, everybody's excited, and they go to Ryan Stegman and Donny Cates, the two creators. Donny wrote the stories, Ryan drew. Ryan took to Twitter and saying, quote, "Yes, I did co-create Knull. No, I didn't know until today that he was going to be in Venom: The Last Dance. Yes, I do expect to finally be able to afford that lazy river mode around my house." Clearly in jest, but it does bring up a good point. Like, where is that money going? Donny Cates just posted a big picture that says money in all caps. Very clearly a joke there. The caption was LOL. But then you start to think like, wait, they're about to make a ton of money off this next movie, off this Venom villain, Knull. And these two guys completely made him up. Understandably, they were under contract. They got paid already, right? But it's kind of like the inventor of the Big Mac. The inventor of the Big Mac did not get paid any additional money for inventing the Big Mac. He was just a cook for McDonald's. But McDonald's then used that to exponentially grow their brand. So shouldn't he get some kickback from that? It only seems fair, right? This isn't the first time this question has been posed, of course. We all love Avengers Endgame, and Thanos is probably the best villain in all of Marvel, if not like movie-wide. But the creator behind it was not getting any money out of that, and they were building an entire franchise off of it. The creator of Thanos' name is Jim Starlin. He's a legend in comic books. He had a very public battle with Marvel over this, and eventually Starlin received an actual payout from Marvel. We don't know the exact amount, it was never public, but they felt that it was fair to give him some money out of this. And now we see that Stegman and Cates didn't even know that Knull was being used in this new movie. And what I've heard a lot from just kind of passing mentions is the creators would mostly like to get a heads up and mostly like to get the acknowledgement of like, hey, from the creator, Donny Cates and Stegman, like that would be really cool. Of course, money trumps all, that's what they really want, but it seems only fair to give them a shout out. Think of the legacy of, Marvel's greatest creator, right? Stan Lee. He co-created the company and made some of its most iconic characters. He leveraged that into creating his own persona and brand. Stan Lee is his own brand. He's very tied to Marvel, of course, but you know Stan Lee. He made a living off of being Stan Lee. He, of course, got compensated as well because when you're that guy, you do. But outside of that, he was still being able to get paid because he was the infamous co-creator of people like the Hulk and Spider-Man and whatnot. Now, Sony has the option to do something different here. They could give a shout out to these two creators. They could pay them, which would be very nice. It's unlikely. Sony is not necessarily known for being super generous, but it does bring up the question of whether or not there should be some industry reform around this. I brought that question to Threads, and this is what you guys had to respond. First off, I did a poll, and the question for the poll, which I admit now was pretty one-sided. I said, should comic creators be compensated when their characters are adapted into blockbuster films? Like, if you just outright voted no, you would have been a jerk, right? So it was 100% yes, but it's the comments that we're going to be going over here. So first we have Comic Book Chronicles Bro. Oh, I'm sorry, Rob, not Bro. Do creators get their fair share? No, not even close. And that had a lot of likes behind it. I think I agree with you there, Rob. Joe Pajamas, love the name. No, they do not. There have not been so many instances of creators not getting the royalties they deserve when films will, with characters they create come out. There's even several court cases about this. So we see Joey here saying, no, they shouldn't be getting compensated for this because it happens all the time. It's a common practice. You got paid to create the character. It's up to the company to choose what they do with it. Capes on Couches, a great podcast, by the way, if you like comic books, says, hard to imagine anyone saying no to this, but if they do, let me know because I just want to have a talk with them. All caps and using the old Beyonce from the Lemonade album. Oh, so good. Thomas, famously from the Challenge Accepted podcast, says technically no because they did work for the company, but morally, I mean, they're making millions and millions. 100% yes. So I think we see it there, right? Everybody understands that everybody's getting paid. So yes, they should get paid. They should get the acknowledgement. No, they don't have to. It's all depending on whether or not we need to do reform after this. It's a complicated question. And if you guys would like to voice your opinion on this, we would love to hear it. Head over to Threads, Twitter, I check Twitter too, Instagram, and especially our Discord where we'll be discussing this further. It's a very interesting conversation and I don't think there's a right answer to it. By the way, guys, Venom The Last Dance is going to be coming out October 25th. We will definitely be doing a review for it, and I cannot wait to see Knull in live action. Remember Flappy Bird, that insanely addictive mobile game everybody got crazy about in 2014? Had us all tapping our screens trying to keep a little bird alive as it dodged through these little jetting walls and stuff like that? Well, it's coming back once again, but with a fair share of controversy and confusion. So let's dive into what's happening with this. Back in 2014, Vietnamese developer Dong Nguyen surprised everybody by pulling Flappy Bird from the App Store and Google Play Store. The game was a massive success, and everything indicated that the earnings were in the tens of thousands per day, but Nguyen felt overwhelmed by the sudden fame. He said, quote, I can call Flappy Bird a success of mine, but it also ruins my simple life. So now I hate it. Since then, he has stepped out of the spotlight and enjoyed that simple life he craved. Well, it's 10 years later, and an organization calling itself Flappy Bird Foundation has announced plans to resurrect the game. They released this new trailer, very full of nostalgia, but interestingly, did not mention the original developer, Dong Nguyen. See, this foundation was established back in 2023, fairly new, and claims to be led by a, quote, dedicated team of passionate fans and industry veterans who love Flappy Bird. They're pitching themselves as a group of enthusiasts that are trying to resurrect this game for the community. Right now, we're in a political season, so I think we all have our radar antenna up and are able to catch that spin pretty hard. They want you to believe that this is just for the people, not for money. Leading this revival is Michael Roberts. He's the, quote, chief creative behind Flappy Bird's return. Roberts is the founder of 1208 Productions, a mobile game developer that's deeply involved with NFTs and cryptocurrencies. His connection has got everybody worried, especially amongst fans who are weary of this crypto integration into the beloved classic. Digging deeper, it appears that Flappy Bird's foundation asserts ownership by having, quote, acquired the official Flappy Bird trademark rights from a company called Game Tech Holdings LLC. So then we dig deeper, right? Well, this comes from Game Tech filing opposition to Nguyen's Flappy Bird trademark last year, claiming that he had abandoned it. Nguyen had failed to respond to the trademark notices, and the U.S. Patent and Trademark offices declared that the original trademark was abandoned, terminating his claim back in this January. Like we said before, Nguyen wanted to return to his simple life, so he wasn't really paying attention to what was going on with Flappy Bird today. And in that lapse, very keen and, let's say, ambitious tech people swooped in and got the name. So now that this is out and we have some cryptocurrency and NFT stuff attached to this, people are getting concerned. A reporter named Varen Binwell, that's a tough name to say, has examined the new game's website and discovered references to Web 3.0 technologies and NFTs that are embedded within the game. This suggests that Flappy Bird's going to have cryptocurrency, NFTs, and a ton of microtransactions. Definitely not Dong's original game. Finally, Dong had to speak out and he took to Twitter to address the situation. He says, quote, I have no involvement with the new Flappy Bird. I did not sell anything. I also don't support crypto. Now, this is his first tweet since 2017. Again, simple life. And he's trying to distance himself from this project as much as he can. The Flappy Bird Foundation plans on launching their version of the game in the end of October. It's going to be across multiple platforms, but you're already seeing a ton of ads for it. IGN and all these very big video game websites are talking this game up quite a bit. Now, they're also reporting on this story, but all of that is creating hype for the game. Now, personally, I find this whole thing a little unsettling. Flappy Bird was a phenomenon, sure. I know even my parents are playing it. Personally, I found it very interesting because of Dong Nguyen, who chose his personal well-being over the fame and fortune of the game. It's something you just don't see anymore, especially not in Western cultures. We're very capitalism forward, right? That's who we are. The game was very simple. It reminded me back of those old Flash games that I first learned about web design back in those days with the little Flash stick figures and stuff like that. That's very much what Flappy Bird was. The fact that this whole Flappy Bird Foundation is moving forward without Nguyen's involvement or even his blessing raises a lot of ethical questions too. Acquiring the trademark through some legal loopholes doesn't sit too well with me. It feels like they're capitalizing on nostalgia without actually respecting the original creator's wishes at all. I think Dong Nguyen said it best in his statement on Twitter. He's clearly going to disassociate with this thing. He stands against cryptocurrency, and I think that shows the disconnect between him and this new game. So, will this new version of Happy Bird soar to the heights that the original game did? Under the weight of this controversy? Probably, because not a lot of people look into this kind of thing. But I think for those who maybe listen to a podcast that talk about gaming stuff, or somebody like me who's constantly researching every day, I think we're going to think twice before we actually download this game and support somebody with microtransactions for doing a little trademark loop-de-loop. Annapurna Interactive, the publisher behind amazing indie titles like Outer Wilds and Stray, both reviewed here on Geek Freaks, has been hit with a complete staff resignation. That's right, the entire staff and senior leadership left the company. That was at the beginning of the week. By the end of the week, they started their own studio. Let's talk about it. Annapurna Interactive is a subsidiary of Annapurna Pictures. It's basically their gaming arm, and it's a powerhouse for indie gaming. It launched in 2016 and has been very successful since then. They're led by Nathan Gray, the publisher, who brought us some truly memorable titles like Kentucky Route Zero and What Remains of Edith Finch, very story-driven stories. But now everything seems to have changed. According to reports from The Hollywood Reporter and Bloomberg, which when the THR gets involved with gaming, it's big, negotiations to spin off Annapurna Interactive into an independent entity fell apart. They wanted to make it its own thing, separated from the movie studio. When it fell apart, Nathan Gary and his entire leadership team, along with over 20 staff members, which is everybody, decided, let's walk away from the company. Jason Schreier, one of the best reporters in gaming of Bloomberg, reported that the breakdown in these negotiations was primary reason behind the mass exodus. Megan Ellison, the founder of Annapurna Pictures, confirmed that the talks had failed, but assured fans, like, don't worry, the games are coming. We're not going to mess up any of our previous planned launches. However, with the entire staff leaving, many of the developers that work with this publisher are scrambling to make sure that their projects are secure. While some major partners like Remedy Entertainment, who does the Control series, they'll be unaffected, they're big enough. Smaller indie developers, they're facing this uncertainty. They're wondering if their deals with the publisher are even still valid. Again, the people that they actually negotiated with don't work there anymore. Amidst all this turmoil, a new player has taken over the scene. That's Absurd Marin. It's going to be based out of San Rafael. Beautiful little area, by the way, up here in Northern California. And guess who's running it? It's the former 20 employees, including Brett Robbins, who's the founder of Ascendant Studios, and they're joining with Dan Hauser from Absurd Ventures to create this new studio. They're going to be focused on story-driven action-adventure games, which sounds very familiar to games like Stray and Outer Wilds. Personally, I was stunned by this news. I mean, it happened so fast. Annapurna Interactive has been a beacon to the indie community, consistently delivering like unique, emotional, rich titles, amazing stories, and for their entire staff and leadership to leave in one day, it left a lot of us, like a lot of my friends who know about the insides of gaming, they were all wondering what's going on. And it seems like the negotiations are simply at the heart of this. It makes me wonder about the internal dynamics between Annapurna Interactive and the Pictures. Was there a disconnect in their vision? Did they see some disagreements in the financial control of the creative directions? They're very different businesses, really. The real concern here is for the developers who are counting on Annapurna for publishing support. Smaller studios may now find themselves without a publisher, which can be devastating when you've been working so long on a game. And for the players, this will no doubt make many of your upcoming games delayed. Any indie title you were excited for that's attached to Annapurna is delayed. On the flip side of that, the emergence of Absurd Marin offers a glimmer of hope. It's encouraging to see industry veterans come together to form this new company. And I like how they laid it out. Story-driven action-adventure games. It tells you what it is. It doesn't immediately solve the problem in the wake of Annapurna's collapse. The indie gaming industry thrives on passion and creativity, but it also requires stability and reliable support structures. And one of the most reliable ones just fell apart. Publishers play a crucial role in funding, marketing, distributing the games. It's not just put it up on Steam and hope for the best. Devolver Digital, by the way, just released The Plucky Knight, which they've been advertising for 2 years now, and the marketing behind it is delightful. It really gets you feeling for the game. That's what publishers do. I hope the developers affected by this can find their new partnership, or perhaps even band together to form something new. Crowdfunding and community support is going to be really important, so keep your eyes open for that. We will make sure to share it on our social media when we can. As fans, we can support these indie developers by following them for updates, purchasing their games when we can. Don't just wait for those free Epic Thursdays. I know I'm a big fan of them, but if you like the game, buy it. The indie game is resilient, but it's, going to have a significant setback today. And indie gaming is where all the creativity in gaming happens. AAA titles, like things that come out of Ubisoft or EA, they won't take chances because they can't afford to. They have too many stockholders to be beholden to. It's in the indie titles where they'll try something, it'll work, and then the AAA guys will take that idea and use it there. So what can we do? Again, keep an eye out for these indie titles. We'll share them as much as we can through Geek Freaks, but just keep an eye out for them and lend your support with both sharing their work and purchasing games that look good to you. Don't just wait for the next Assassin's Creed or Madden. Get involved on the ground floor. It's truly rewarding for both them and for you as a player as well. Last bit of gaming news I want to dive into is the fact that PlayStation just announced PlayStation 5 Pro. I cannot believe we're already in the Pro phase of this console generation. Feels like we just got into it, really. This is going to be set to launch November 7th, 2024, and the PS5 Pro marks a significant mid-generation console refresh. The problem that everybody seems to be having is with the price. It is going to be $700. It's a powerhouse with the specs, I'll give you that. Under the hood, it's a beast. But that price is a little hard for a system that's playing the games you probably already have. And worst of all, it's digital only. So if you have those games in physical form, you're going to be spending money on the disc drive as well. But before we go fully down that rabbit hole of why is this worth it, let's talk about the upgrades that this thing comes with. First off, the GPU, that's the graphics. It's got 67% more compute units, 20% faster memory than the standard PS5. And the PS5 by itself is already amazing. That's 45% faster rendering, which means the way to best put this is basically it'll look a lot smoother when you're running around. I'm really thinking Ghost of Tsushima right now. That grass that goes across, it'll look even smoother than it already does. Speaking of an amazing game for ray tracing, improved ray tracing. The lighting will be even more dynamic. It's going to be 3 times faster in rendering that light. It's going to be beautiful. And what actually probably is the biggest deal is AI-driven upscaling for PSSR. So this is PlayStation Spectral Super Resolution. It takes something that's already high def and then uses AI to make it even higher definition. With this technology, I mean, it won't be ready now, but with this technology, eventually they could upscale older games as well. Now, Sony's really touting this as like, it will make things look realistic. Does it make things look beautiful? Yes, of course it does, but realistic, that's a stretch, Sony. Storage-wise, one of the biggest pluses is that the PS5 Pro comes with 2 terabytes SSD. Of course, without the disk drive, you're gonna need that. It'll also include the DualSense wireless controller, which is a very beautiful controller, and the Astro's Playroom pre-installed, which that's a hit too. Some of their previously launched games are gonna have this PS5 Pro enhanced versions coming out, or I guess available already if you already own them. But that's Alan Wake 2, Assassin's Creed Shadows, Demon's Souls. We got Gran Turismo 7, Spider-Man 2, some of their best. From my perspective, the PS5 Pro is a serious piece of hardware, aimed at those hardcore gamers that just must have the best of the best. And there are times when I'm that gamer myself. It's got significant GPU upgrades and improved that ray tracing that's amazing. And that AI-driven upscaling, that's the most intriguing thing I've seen. However, the lack of the included disk drive is a pretty notable decision there. While the industry is certainly moving towards all digital, we've seen players that appreciate the physical media more. Whether it's, trading it with your friend or frankly getting the good steals at GameStop, that's what people really want. You don't want to be beholden to Sony putting it on sale. And then, as we've talked about before on this podcast, when you buy a digital game, you don't really buy it. You rent the license, indefinitely. And there is eventually an expiration date on that. Their enhanced titles, they did a great job picking those. I mean, Spider-Man 2 is already a beautiful game. If you can enhance that more, that has me interested. Then there's Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which Final Fantasy, again's gorgeous, and they have another one of those coming out pretty soon, so it's good to kind of get people thinking about that. But the elephant in the room is definitely going to be that $700 price. It's significant investment, especially if you already, own the PS5. One of the things that some of the industry insiders are saying is that you can't look at it as a $700 investment because you have to think you're going to be selling your PS5. If you have to justify it that way, if you're telling people to think of it that way, you have a problem with your price point. You have to justify your price point before the system comes out. That doesn't make a lot of sense. If you're a new buyer that skipped the PS5 completely, this might be the best option for you. But if you're a current PS5 owner like myself, I would say just skip this. We have a new Switch coming out next year, which according to leaks is going to be about $400. I would save your money for that because you're going to want to buy those games too. And Switch, or Nintendo in general, I guess, they have this odd knack of never depreciating. To this day, you can go buy a GameCube. It's going to be the price of a new GameCube just because people collect them. And the games themselves only get more valuable over time. So save your money to buy another Switch. And I would not buy the PS5 Pro unless you are like the most hardcore PlayStation fan, or if you're brand new to the system and you figure, why not get the best? Let me know. Are you guys going to buy the PS5 Pro? Are you spending that $700? And if so, I'd really like to know why. What about it intrigued you? Next, we're going to be taking a look at the 76th Emmy Awards, the biggest winners and the biggest surprises from the night. First up, the show that dominated the evening, Shogun. You've heard us talk about Shogun often on here. Wonderful acting, performances, costume, everything. Well, it just won the awards to prove it. It led the night with 4 major wins: Best Actors and Actress for Drama, Best Director, Best Series, 18 in total when you include the Creative Arts Emmys, which puts it as a new record for any single season. That's pretty incredible. Shogun wasn't the only heavy hitter. We also had The Bear and Baby Reindeer doing quite well. The Bear winning a lot for the comedy series side of things, which, yes, we've talked about it online. They've even joked about it during the during the Emmys, that is The Bear comedy? I would say no, but they say it is. Baby Reindeer, which is a wild, wild story, is best for miniseries. So that's why that one qualifies as a separate thing than drama. I want to give a special shout out to Jean Smart, who won for lead actress in a comedy series, and that's for her role Hacks. I actually think Hacks probably should have taken Best Comedy Series over The Bear, and I think after the criticism it received, I think they're going to reposition The Bear as a drama for the next Emmys. I'd be very surprised if it goes for comedy again. It just doesn't make any sense, and a lot of people are pretty vocal about that. Basically, the way to look at it is anything that The Bear touched with like directing, writing, stuff like that, it was pretty dominant in, but wherever it slipped at all, it was Hacks that pulled it up. Like the writing team behind Hacks, Lucia, Paul, and Jen Sataski, they got best writing for the series. Well deserved, very known for its writing. Personally, I'm thrilled that Shogun received so many recognitions. It's got that rich storytelling, and it's a deep dive into feudal Japan, not only providing like compelling entertainment, but also brought a fresh perspective to mainstream audiences. Many people watched the show with Japanese language and English subtitles. The fact that that did well is a very good sign for the broadening of our mainstream audiences. And while The Bear may be getting a lot of heat for being a comedy, quote unquote, the fact that Jeremy Allen White, Eben Moss-Bachrach, and Liza Colin-Zayas, that trio, they're so good. Their chemistry, both on screen and off screen, it's impeccable. It's infectious. And then looking at Baby Reindeer to wrap things up, again, it's those 3 that really won everything. Richard Gadd and Jessica Gunning, they played these intense roles where emotions were frayed and at their peak, and you were going back and forth between compassion and fear. Masterfully done. The exciting thing about this year's Emmys is this like shift towards diverse and international narratives. The industry is becoming more inclusive, and we're finally starting to see it in the reward shows. It wasn't very long ago when people were talking about how there were no black actors nominated for anything for the Oscars, and yet it was also a year when you had like Denzel Washington just showing off he was so good. I think for us viewers, this means we're going to be getting more variety, more depth, more opportunities to see ourselves and others represented on screen. As these win awards and make money, the big industry guys are going to be more willing to give those people a chance. Like, I love Tom Hanks. I'll watch anything with Tom Hanks, But we don't need Tom Hanks to be in everything. Let's find new actors from different backgrounds and tell stories that I don't already know. I know the Emmys are fading from favor. They're not the biggest thing anymore. But this year's Emmys, I think, shows that the industry as a whole is on a better track to being more inclusive and telling greater stories than it ever has. We are done with the news and heading into our interview. This week, I sat down with Ash and Elee, two professional cosplayers. Going into this, I knew cosplay was cool. I see it at conventions and always appreciate the work they put into it. I had no clue the dedication to prep, transportation, knowing what you're going to show and where you're going to show it. So much work goes into cosplay. While talking to Elee and talking to Ash, I got to really learn a lot more. I've known Ash for a while now. He's part of the Capital Creative Showcase that we go to every year, as you guys are very well aware. This is my first time speaking with Elee, but we are fast friends. Elee's knowledge about cosplay is next level. Let's learn more from these two cosplayers about their passion and all the work that goes into those incredible cosplays. Today I'm joined by Ash.
Hi.
There we go. And we have Elee. How you doing, Elee?
Hi, I'm good.
Here we have two professional cosplayers. So you go to a convention, you see these amazing cosplays, and you're like, how do they do it? We're about to learn right now from both Ash and Elee. What got you guys into this? Let's get right into it. I want to know, what was your first introduction into cosplay?
I think for me, my first one was Springfest in New York, actually. That's 2013. And a friend of mine was telling me, hey, like, we should go check it out. Because I was in college in 2012 and 2013.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really have a lot of crafting things. So my shoddy closet cosplay was going as a Pokeball.
I love that. You've always been kind of king of the like meme cosplay. That's like your specialty.
And that was my first one. It was like white shirt, white pants, red shirt, and then I made a cardboard thing as the belt button thing. So that was my first cosplay.
So I actually have kind of a wild like how I got into cosplay story. So I was a freshman in high school. I had like made a bunch of friends and I had convinced a bunch of people to do a Alice in Wonderland stage production with me. So we were all like working for like 6 months. Like we wrote our own screenplay. We were doing costumes, like we were doing all this stuff. And we were doing this like teaser trailer, like a couple scenes of the show on Memorial Weekend, which was the same weekend as one of the local cons. And one of my friends was like, oh my God, like we should go to this con together also, blah, blah, blah. Like it's super fun. So the same weekend that I'm like frantically finishing all of these costumes, like for all of my friends for the stage production, I also managed to pull together a cosplay to go to this convention. And at the time, one of my friends had gotten me into Homestuck. So I was a big Homestuck fan. Yeah. And so I did Aradia Megiddo from Homestuck. She's one of the trolls. So I had the gray skin. I didn't have a wig. I spray painted my real hair black, which looked about as good as you can imagine, which was not good at all. But I had a fun time. Yeah, it was great. And we got to like go and we got to just like hang out with like honestly, I'm really grateful to like the Homestuck fandom for being my introduction to cosplay, because that fandom in particular was like super welcoming. Like there was tons of people that I met at that con that I'd never met before that were just like, come hang out with us, come play games with us, like come do all this stuff. So it was a really, really fantastic like introduction to like conventions and the world of cosplay.
That's a good one too. Speaking of a different, unique way of getting into it, going from like theater craft, what are some of the similarities you see between theater craft and cosplay?
Very much the like project management of it. So like when you're doing theater costuming, it's like you have a deadline, you have like the show opens, you have to get all of your stuff done, like, you know, well in advance of that. And you have to like essentially manage this entire project. And cosplayers do that and they don't even realize that they're doing it. Cause like, if you think about it, when you go to a con, you're wearing oftentimes 3 or 4 different costumes in the same weekend for the same event. And so you have to manage this like production of multiple costumes for usually yourself to wear, but sometimes for your friends or other things. And so you have to do a lot of like, okay, you know, when do I need to start on this? How do I balance working on it? Like I need to do all the spray painting because it needs to dry, like all of that kind of like backwards, like project planning. Cosplayers are doing that sometimes unsuccessfully, right? We all know the con crunch, like
Oh yeah.
last minute trying to finish stuff, but like that's a big part of it that is very similar to like theater production.
Ashes, does that sound familiar to you? Does that ring true? Are you like, oh wow, I'm a project manager, didn't know it?
I mean, I feel like I've been a project manager and didn't know it's more in the context of like making video games or and like having managing to climb myself up into like Sacramento Developer Collective,
Yeah.
Which is my nonprofit that's dedicated to like game design and development. So I feel like that's been more my experience, having been an accidental role.
Transferable skill though, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah. Speaking of those fandoms and that being embraced, have you found a particular fandom that seems to be the most appreciative of your work as a cosplayer?
Yeah, that one's hard. So I don't know if this counts as a fandom, but I do a lot of competitions,
Mhm.
and I find that everyone that you meet and hang out with kind of backstage at the competition, like all of your fellow competitors are usually like super appreciative and like that you don't like know about. Like they're just excited to see other cool like craft people making cool stuff. So I would say that is for sure. Um One place I notice that craftsmanship gets like ignored a lot is if you're doing a really, really popular cosplay and there's like, 50 plus other people dressed as the same character. A lot of times, if you made your cosplay and everyone else purchased theirs, the like saturation of all of these cosplayers wearing purchased cosplay means that people like won't notice that you made your own cosplay, or they won't like
Oh wow.
they'll just be like, oh, it's another your cosplayer, oh, it's another Spider-Gwen cosplayer, and they won't realize like, oh, you made your entire suit from scratch, it's not a bodysuit that you bought on Amazon. And so that's where I kind of see like some like underappreciation sometimes.
I feel like a good number of my cosplays are either just like small recognizable ones, like I've done Ariel or like Chip Skylark or like tiny ones. So I feel like I more or less am aiming towards the general witty, like punny humor, which is
Yeah.
a lot more generic, and I think I just kind of pull in more, not necessarily a fandom, but more, hey, look, hi, I make stupid jokes in the form of Mikasa Tsukasa cosplay kind of thing.
That one got a good reaction, I feel like.
Yeah, I feel like because like when I did my Mikasa Tsukasa one, I was encouraged to submit into Masquerade, and I didn't even know about the Masquerade. That was my first time like submitting into the Masquerade at Psych Anime, and I won most practical cosplay at the time. So they didn't really have a
What year was
category.
that?
It was 2015, 16.
Yeah, back when that con was a lot smaller.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
getting big. Yeah. When you're doing, you talked a little bit about there, Elee, about a lot of people doing the same cosplay. One of my favorite conventions is BlizzCon down in Anaheim, and there is only so many Blizzard IPs. So you see a lot of Arthas, you see a lot of divas. How do you stand out? Do you try to make the best version of the original costume, or do you try to give it your own flair, maybe be a different version of that character?
Usually the second one. So actually, if I'm doing a cosplay that I think is going to be really popular or have a lot of people dressing up as it, and I'm not doing it for like a competition, a lot of times what I will do is I will be like, how can I do this in a really quick, accessible way? And like I worry less about accuracy and I worry more about like what kind of gives like the vibe of the character. So for example, I did Yor from Spike's Family, and I like thrifted this like velvet dress, and then I like altered it to put all the straps on it. I wore like thigh-high demonias, which were like not accurate to her boots like at all, but I really liked it because I felt like it really had my own version, and I looked different from a lot of the other people who had more accurate but like more identical cosplays. And I'm actually working on Jinx right now for Arcane because season 2 is coming out really soon. Super excited for that.
Same.
And I definitely am going to be putting a lot of my own touches. Like I found a striped fabric, but it's like a wider stripe, so her pants are going to look a little different. I'm going to add some of my own details to it, and I think that's just like more fun when you're doing a character that there's tons and tons of versions of. Is like you really get to have what details do you want to see and like how do you want to do something? And then also too, like have fun with it. Don't worry as much about like being super accurate or having every little detail. Like, how can I do this in a quicker way? And then just get to be the character. Because it's fun to be a character that's really popular. Like it's fun to run around and be like, oh my God, there's 50 like Jinx cosplayers. So I enjoy that. I just realized that like I don't want to put a ton of effort into something that won't be recognized. And that's where I notice I can cut corners and still get that recognition and have a fun time and like not spend as much effort on it.
Now, when I'm at these conventions and I'm wearing normal clothes, it becomes a long day. Do you guys ever focus on comfort? Do you try to find little shortcuts to find a way to be, halfway decent, comfortable while you're dressed up as somebody?
I mean, for me, like I managed to choose stuff like Chip Skylark. Oh, cool, sneakers. Or Gamer Girl. I also had sneakers, and like I'm just more or less having to carry a whole like fake grill with me.
Yeah, I would say for me, I usually pick what cosplays I'm doing on different days based on that. So like a lot of times Sunday, I'll do like a chiller, more casual cosplay. Like I've done Crowley, who's like, suit jacket jeans situation, very casual. And then sometimes too, like, oh, I will also change in the middle of the day. So like I've done like at Satkinme, it was really hot. So I did Charlie in the morning and I wore like a sundress and I had like my arms and legs out. I had a parasol. So I was like really cool and comfortable. And then I changed like, in the afternoon into Angel Dust, which is a very like full like spandex bodysuit head to toe, like 6-inch heels, much more uncomfortable. But I'm only wearing him for, a few hours instead of all day. And so that becomes a way of like managing the difficulties. Or like sometimes I will just fully take off a part of the cosplay. Like I took my entire shirt off because I was like, I'm hot and I don't want to wear this anymore. So that definitely happens towards the end of the day too. Like the cosplayer walking around with no wig. Like
I am so excited for Has-Been Hotel season 2. Just hearing like Angel Dust and all these different characters, I'm like, oh, can I wait? I'm so excited.
Me too. They tease some stuff in the panel, and I cannot wait for that.
So good, so good. Okay, so you're going to these different conventions. How hard is it to haul everything out there? And I always go to conventions and see people having to check weapons, things like that, cosplay weapons and stuff like that. How hard is it to prep for that? And how long are you guys putting into the prep time before you actually get to the convention itself?
I think for me, like I hadn't had to worry about that too much until I had a lot of props with me.
Right.
And for me, the most recent one was actually ALA earlier this year in January, because I had wanted to make a toothbrush for Chip Skylark and my Gamer Grill props. And a lot of that was surprisingly a lot of things to bring. And I was going down to LA with a friend. I was like road tripping it. And so having 3 cosplayers be in the same car with all of our props, it gets pretty like compact a little bit, So it can be after that I realized, you know what, I need to be mindful of my props more and be like, okay, I need to focus on just one cosplay. If I want to do props, only 1 or 2, depending on how large or small it is. It also kind of makes me think about how I want to, like, one future project I want to do for Chip Skylark is like a more complicated like toothbrush guitar thing that I want to do. But I also want to make it foldable and even in like a suitcase kind of. So like I'm still trying to figure out the logistics of that, but that is a plan.
Okay, so for me, I travel to a lot of cons that are farther away. I go to some big conventions. I've gone to like KatsuCon, which is on the East Coast before. So obviously like a cross-country flight. Flying versus driving is like the first deciding factor when I'm planning cosplays for conventions is, do I need to fit my cosplay into a suitcase and bring it on an airplane? Because that immediately means there's a lot of considerations you have to figure out in terms of how can I safely check this? How can I make sure it's not going to get damaged? How can I like get it through airport security? All of that kind of stuff is like very important when you're flying to a convention. I am a diehard Southwest girly. I fly Southwest all the time because they give you 2 free checked bags. So if I'm flying to a con, I know right off the bat I can bring 2 suitcases and I can fit a lot of stuff in those 2 suitcases, and that gives me a lot of options. So I have a serpent cosplay with like a 15-foot stuffed tail that I
Oh my
wear,
god.
and that I have brought on an airplane to a convention multiple times. Like, it takes up an entire suitcase by itself, just the tail, but I've done it and it's fine. And it's squishy, so it will like squish down into the suitcase, which is totally fine. But I have other cosplays where like I have a shiny Umbreon with a giant sword that's like almost as tall as I am. And that's a car only cosplay. If I'm
Yeah.
not driving, I cannot bring it with me. And also another factor that I think a lot of people don't think about until they get into competitions is if you're doing a masquerade competition, especially if you're doing a performance, you'll often need even bigger kind of like stage set pieces sometimes. So hopefully, fingers crossed, I still have to like be juried for this. I'm hoping to compete at ALA and do a performance where I will need a big screen, like a backdrop screen to like hide myself for my performance. And that is something I'm going to have to bring with me. So I knew that when I was deciding, okay, am I going to fly or I'm going to drive to LA? I have to drive this year to do this performance because I have to bring this huge backdrop. And
Yeah.
so that can be a deciding factor for people too, sometimes in those cons that are like, well, I could drive, but it's all day, or I could fly. Sometimes that will be a deciding factor. It's like, what are you trying to do at the con?
Already there needs to be far more appreciation for cosplayers. Anybody listening right now
Yes.
should be like, oh my god, I didn't even think about that. uh, you were talking before about thrifting, a dress and stuff like that. I kind of feel like that would be part of a lot of the fun is trying to find these materials in random places that might be forgotten material. Has there been any experiences you guys have had where you found like the right material in the weirdest place? I see
Wait, you
Liz
said
kinda-
the right material in the weirdest place.
yeah, like I didn't
Oh,
expect to
oh,
see
oh, oh,
Beetlejuice's suit in
oh,
whatever.
oh, oh. I just thought of something. When like I made Misty Goldine a while back in like Fanime
Wow.
2013. No, not 13. That doesn't sound right. 2017. 2017.
10 plus years ago, somewhere in that
Yeah.
realm, almost.
But yeah, but what I had done is like, oh, I wanted to make her tail. I couldn't figure out how. And then I realized we had a broken umbrella.
Oh wow.
So I modified the umbrella. It was already broken, so I kind of took it apart a little bit and tried to like play around with it. And then I had done a sample like, okay, here's how much fabric I need to go over the umbrella. And then I kind of managed to like kind of makeshift a skirt to go on top of that. And it was already broken, right? So I had like half broken down. And then I had to figure out how am I going to attach this to myself. And so I kind of had like some string and I had to make some holes in my dress that I had sort of made. I just had to make some holes, but in the end, I managed to like tie it around my waist and then just ask my photographer friend to just Photoshop it out. That way, in the pictures, it looked like, hey, the tail's just coming out from me.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I'm a big like thrift person, so I would say all of my cosplay shoes are from the thrift store. Thrift store is a great place to get shoes for cosplay because a lot of times you need something either really specific for your shoes or you just need like a base that you can then build like a cover onto. And so I will just go to the thrift store. I'll pick up, like a $5 to $10 pair of shoes that is my base, and then I can build on top of it this like really specific custom crazy boot whatever the character is wearing. So that's a big one. I always look for like fabric at the thrift store. I have a huge stash of fabric, so I've definitely found some great fabric at the thrift store too. And then also underrated one for sure is like the hardware store. There's a lot of great supplies at the hardware store, and it's truly that meme where like Ron Swanson walks in and is like, I know more than you, don't fucking talk to me. He like that is a cosplayer in Home Depot because they walk in and they need like I've bought like flooring foam, which is this really thin, like flexible, like transparent foam, and I've made wings out of it. I've
Yeah.
bought pink insulation foam to like carve into props. I've bought PVC pipe, and it's like I'll talk to the player and I'll be like, "Hey, I need like a hinge, but it swivels, but it's like really small." And then they're like, "What are you talking about?" And then I just like walk around. This looks like it would work, and then I do
Yeah.
that. Like, I made like an extra set of arms, and I used a bunch of just like random hinge, bolt, twisty, weird situation from stuff that I found in the hardware store, and that's how I do a lot of my kind of prop constructed stuff.
I never thought I would be at Home Depot. I was there to build D&D stuff. And I'm over there buying insulation foam for D&D walls. And I'm like,
Right?
who knew?
Yeah,
That's great.
there's a lot of great hardware store materials that people don't think about. Yeah, contact cement, my beloved.
It feels like there's so many skills at play here. I'm sure you guys are starting to sew, and of course knowing the different kinds of glues and foams and stuff like that. Have any of these skills translated into professional life, or are you starting to see cosplay as a profession that you could kind of expand upon? I was talking to Ash before about like, hey, social media platforms could use, sponsors and stuff like that. Have you seen any avenues in that?
I feel like for me, like my day job, or I'm looking for full-time UX designer positions, and I feel like a lot of what I do as a cosplayer translates and has a lot of parallels to it, because a UX designer does a lot of user research, different types of research methods, and then turning that into like designs, different types of design deliverables, whether it be like creating like personas or journey maps or wireframes, prototypes, all sorts of different things. And so I feel like I could even, like, if I wanted to get into making toys and be a product designer as like in terms of toys, then I could work on my props more. I could create more like custom props for like OC characters even, and then that could technically count as a project if I wanted to go in that route, which is another idea.
Yeah.
So I feel like there's a lot of ways on how I could mix the two together and then really lean into that. So that is one of many branches for me.
Yeah, so I've taken a little bit of a different track with this. So I am a firm believer in the like do not monetize your hobby realm. A lot of people have asked me like, do you do commissions? Can I commission you? Will you make this? Blah blah. I'll go to the run fair and I'll have like a giant dandelion staff, and then everyone will be like, oh my god, you should sell those. And I'm like, no, I will not be doing that. And that's very much as a like I want to protect my own peace and my own energy, and I want cosplay to remain like fun for me.
Yeah.
However, I do think that there's like a huge great avenue for knowledge sharing, for teaching, for kind of like representing the community, like that sort of like influencer slash ambassador kind of area. And that's where I really feel like my value add to the world of cosplay and to the cosplay community really shines. So I've been a local guest at my local Comic-Con convention here in Reno where I live. I'd love to do more guest opportunities. So I need to like reach out to some more cons and see if they need more cosplay guests, but that's an avenue I've been pursuing. I don't know if that really like makes a lot of money. It's kind of really more of a volunteer thing of like you volunteer your time and you like help promote the con and you like judge the competition or whatever, and then you like in exchange get to like attend for free. So it's really more of a trade kind of situation. But I'm a big fan of trade, so I'm really into that. And then I love like teaching and helping people. So like I'm very open about like everything I do and all the builds I do. I want to do more like videos and like long form content. I just don't have the time for that right now. But I'm pretty active on Instagram, and I'm trying to do more like answering questions, shorter tutorials, like stuff like that. Because I do think that like when you've been crafting and sewing and like making cosplay for like over a decade, you pick up a lot of stuff and you have a lot of skills. And like I definitely see a gap between cosplayers who purchase their cosplays and who don't have any of those skills, and cosplayers who are crafters and who or people who want to make that transition into crafting, into making their own cosplay, but they don't know how, or they don't know where to start, or they don't have any of these skills. And I want to bridge that gap, and I want to encourage people to like start making stuff and start doing things on their own, because I think it's such a fun and rewarding part of cosplay is the making of it.
Yeah. How does a
Yeah.
new cosplayer get into, say they're like, oh, I want to be a cosplayer. I see it and it's awesome. Where do they start? Because is it best to buy cosplay or go right into making your own?
I feel like for me, like I'm still very much in the not making my own that cosplays. I more or less makeshift. So I feel like for beginners, at least from my perspective, like it's okay to want to buy a cosplay. And like I feel like that's like one of the first easiest things to do because my first handmade cosplay, it was definitely a lot. I didn't really have a lot of resources other than going to Joann's and signing up for the sewing class, learning how to
Yeah.
make a circle dress, and my mom and my dad helping me. Apparently, my dad is better at sewing than my mom. A fun little fun fact there. But yeah, I feel like my strategy that I would want to tell newcomers would be like just like you feel free and go as a normie or like dress something casually or buy something just so like don't put too much pressure on yourself for the first one, or if you really want to like then like it's a matter of finding the right resources. And I feel like for me, after going to the first convention and making a lot of friends, then being able to like just network and learn about how like saying like, oh my god, I like your cosplay, like how did you do that, I would like to learn more. And you kind of learn how other people make their cosplays because there really is no one right way, there's multiple different ways. Like for example, Ariel mermaid, like I could still do different versions. I could try to do everything in origami if I wanted to. I could do everything in crochet if I wanted to, or I could even do like in cardboard boxes, go like Roblox style, Minecraft style, you know? Like there's all sorts of different ways on how you can make a cosplay. You don't have to do it accurate to the exact detail, you know? And that I feel like that kind of skill level is definitely not beginner anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think for new cosplayers, you see so much on social media that like looks very perfect and looks
Yeah.
very polished. I think people like they want to look like that right away. And I think in some ways, like, I'm glad that purchasing cosplay is more accessible. I'm glad that like you can go online and you can buy an entire cosplay for like $50 and you can get into the hobby and you can start out doing it. I think that's really great. But I do think it creates this kind of divide where when I started cosplaying, you could not go online and purchase a cosplay. That did not exist. And so if you wanted to do it, you had to figure out how to do it yourself, and you had to thrift things, and you had to make a closet cosplay, and you had to sew pieces. And yes, when you first start out, your skills are not going to be very good, and you're going to compare yourself to others, and you're going to be like, wow, my thing looks terrible. But that's part of the learning journey. And I think that I've seen a lot of really encouraging people who are really happy to see new cosplayers who are starting their journey and who have, very basic skills and have a lot of way to go to learn. But I think that like what I would say is like even if you decide to purchase a cosplay, I would recommend looking up some tutorials and having one piece of it that you try and make yourself, whether that's you're unhappy with how the gloves look or you're unhappy with some, detail on the purchase cosplay that you think you can do better, you want it to look a different way, whether that's, oh my god, how do I style my wig to look that fun like spiky anime, like look up wig styling, like spending a little bit of time to add on to your cosplay to add those details to make it better will make you happier in the long run, and it will start developing those skills to then be like, okay, well, maybe next time I will, make my cosplay instead of purchasing it. And, again, there's nothing wrong with purchasing cosplays. I have cosplays I've purchased. I've purchased cosplays both online and from like other cosplayers who are selling their old ones. I think that like that's a very important part of kind of the cosplay ecosystem, and, having everything kind of go around. And when people get tired of wearing stuff or whatever, like I think that is very much part of the community. But again, I want to encourage people that you do not have to look perfect and put together and exactly like the character. And it's way more fun to experiment and to try and make some stuff and to try and add your own special touches and your own unique elements to stuff. And you'll have a lot of fun doing that, and you'll learn things along the way, and you'll build those skills, which is such a cool part of cosplay.
That's such a great idea, and that adds like ownership to it too. Like now, this is my cosplay because I added something to it that makes it stand out.
Yes. Yes.
So-
Yeah. And there's so many resources now. Like that's the other crazy thing now
Mhm.
is that so much of the materials and the tutorials and the information is so much more accessible than it used to be. Like there's entire YouTube channels dedicated to people who are cosplayers showing you how they built stuff, how they made stuff. If you're like, okay, I want to do this character, Googling like, how do I make Link's sword will give you like 50 videos, right?
Yeah.
And if you're like, oh, I want to make, a sword of this obscure character from this obscure anime from 10 years ago, and there's not a video tutorial for that. Looking up how to make Link's sword will teach you a lot of things that you can probably apply to some obscure character that does not have a full breakdown crafting tutorial video because they're not as popular. And so that's another great hack too, is like, okay, how do I make a cosplay sword? How do I style a ponytail wig? Like you can look up tutorials for specific pieces of your cosplay, and that will teach you so much about the character you're trying to do, even if they're not a really popular character.
That's kind of making me feel like if I had to theorize on how to make a sword, which I still don't know how to do, I would just try to shape it out of paper first. Like my first thought is just origami, and then like, all right, how do I
Your
solidify
first thought is
it?
origami for everything. I'm waiting for your full 100% origami cosplay. When is that coming?
Cool.
I feel like I might do that for Chip Scholar.
Yeah. Yeah, you need a
Oh,
full origami cosplay. Or like a giant like ball gown that's like covered in origami. That'd be
Ooh, yes,
That's amazing.
Ariel.
Yes, Ariel ball gown.
Origami
covered in
so
ball-
hard too.
ball Ariel.
Yeah.
Bring
Well,
that
and
up.
that's the thing. Cosplayers will
Right.
do the
Right.
most like detailed, time-consuming stuff for their love of the craft and their love of
Yeah.
the character. Like I made a giant serpent, right? I had to make like 150 scales out of fabric. They were like fabric triangles, and I had to sew them together, and I had to sew lace under them, and I had to sew beads under them by hand, and then I had to sew all of them onto my snake tail, and I did that 150 times. Like cosplayers
Oh,
be doing the most all the time.
It's part of the
Appreciate the
process.
details.
Yes, it's part of the process for sure. And we do it because we love it, and we like are excited about the character, we're excited about the thing, and we just want to show our love and appreciation for it for sure.
It sounds like community is a very big part of cosplay. Do you guys feel like it's a pretty welcoming community?
Oh yeah, for sure. I feel like
think
they're like always like everyone is always so like welcoming, happy, like wanting to learn. It's only more the few bad apples that make it like not as
Like anything?
great, but I feel like to me like a lot of the good outweighs a lot of the bad, and I feel like
100%.
especially with the whole consent stuff and all the other things in recent years, I feel like millennials we walked so Gen Z could run, and now
Yeah.
there's a lot more like firmer boundaries being set in the workplace and in cosplay. And I feel like just the whole talk around like, hey, like being able to communicate with each other and set boundaries, and like it kind of even teaches people how to talk to narcissistic people as well, because like I had some friends ask me like, oh my god, like since they feel like, oh, like Ash, like you know how to set boundaries, like how do I do this, like how can I talk to this person? And I would kind of like hear how they're talking to those people, like, oh, okay, I see where you're going, where it's going wrong, and I'm more or less just recapping what I learned in therapy. So I feel like a lot of it really just boils down to that. And I feel like because of a lot of people in therapy now, a lot of us recognizing we're neurodivergent, ADHD, autistic, etc., I feel like a lot of us now have the right kind of behavioral language to really resonate with each other.
Yeah.
Because I feel like in the past, a lot of it was like, oh, I don't understand how you did this or that, and attaching their actions to their character immediately, and then just demonizing people so much. When nowadays I feel it's like, oh, I think they made bad decisions, but I don't think that they're a bad character, so long as if that person is willing to learn and hold themselves accountable, then I think this can be, a fixable social situation. So I feel like thanks to a lot of that growth, that has improved the cosplay community by like 1,000%. So I feel like that's just been my experience so far.
So well said.
I will
Ash.
say, I think I agree with Ash on the like. I think the good outweighs the bad, and that it's definitely better than it is bad. But I also don't want anyone to kind of like assume that everything is going to be perfectly fine and there will be no issues and no incidents, because that like is not true.
Yeah.
Because I
There's
do
no
think
issues.
that like the thing you have to keep in mind is it's so big. Like when we talk about the cosplay community, like we are not talking about a monolith. We are talking about this like huge, insane, giant group of people that are going to be connected to it in a lot of different ways and have a lot of different background and experience and etiquette and all of those kind of things. And you know, like if you think about it, like the only thing we have in common is that we wear costumes. We could be into completely different fandoms or have completely different like beliefs and stuff. And so it really is so big and so diverse, which is what is fantastic about it. But that also results in kind of clashing or incidences or things like that. And so the other thing too is that it's a space where you have both minors and adults all kind of existing together. And there's not a lot of minor supervision. Like I was going to cons as a teenager, completely unsupervised. I definitely made some questionable choices as a teenager that I should not have been doing, but I was a teenager. Like I didn't know better.
Yeah.
And so I think that like, but at the same time, all the adults in the cosplay community, like that's not my mom. Like it's not their job to parent me. Right. And so I think the minor adult dynamic is something you have to be careful of. I think like the sexiness of cosplay, like cosplay does not have to be, but can be a very sexy thing. And a lot of people will do really sexy cosplays, or they'll bring in sort of like BDSM or adult elements into their cosplays, or just like are present in the fandom. And so like that's something you have to be careful of like, you know, is this male photographer who wants to take a picture of you doing it because he's a nice guy, or is he doing it because he wants to get creep shots of you, right? And so I think that's something to be aware of, especially if you are feminine presenting and wear sexy cosplays. Like I had an incident where I was wearing like a collar for the cosplay I was wearing, and this stranger that I'd never talked to before comes up to me and he clips a leash onto my collar without asking me.
Oh, wow.
Like insane. Like, and this was like at a hentai panel where like literally 30 minutes prior to this happening, they had a whole big spiel at the beginning of like consent and cosplay is not consent and you have to ask for consent and blah, 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 blah. And he very much did not do that. And so like, that's what I want to say is that like, you know, you do have to be vigilant. You do have to be aware. And I also think too, that like, I think cosplay as a hobby is way more fun when you find your own niche and find your own people and make friends, like make actual friends of people that you spend time with together and get to know and go through, you know, the standard friendship progression of getting to know someone and becoming closer with them. And I've made fantastic and amazing friendships with tons of people in the cosplay community, and I have a lot of really lifelong friends through cosplay. But at the same time, not everyone that you meet and go up to is going to immediately want to be your best friend right away. And so you can have a lot of really fantastic interactions and meet a lot of really fantastic people, but you do still have to, you know, have boundaries and be reasonable and not just assume that some cosplayer that you talk to is going to be your friend because they like the same character as you. So those are kind of my, I guess, like PSAs to new people in the cosplay community is like, beware of creeps and bad apples and go through the process of making friends, because there's a lot of really friendly and fantastic people in there, and you just have to go out there and find them and like talk to them.
And there's safety in numbers too, to have that core like 5 friends that are going to the same con as you. There's safety.
Yes.
Now, as a podcaster who is often at these conventions too, like we are invited to share the event. So our job is to take pictures of things. One of the things that we like to do is we'll ask permission, first of all, of course, to take pictures of cosplayers. And what we've been doing over the last like 6 months or so, as we try to even be better about it, is get their social media tag if they're willing to share it, and tag them in the photo itself, as in like, we're not using them, but also like sharing. Is there some best practices that somebody who is attending a convention that wants to share the cool cosplay, some best practices they should be doing?
Yes, 100%. So what I would say is you mentioned it right away. Ask for permission before you take their picture. Do not walk around taking pictures of people. You will never know what is going on with someone, whether they will or won't take a picture. Like, I'm going to say yes 95% of the time. I put all of this effort in my outfit. I want you to take my picture.
Right.
But I want you to ask me so that I can give you a cute pose and I can look really nice and you can get a great photo, right?
Right.
So that's tip number one. Go up to them, ask them if they are sitting down and eating, if they've taken off parts of their cosplay, if they like are walking really fast. I would say maybe that is not a great time, and kind of like circle back, hope you run into them later. Because there's the times I have to say no are usually like I took half of it off because I'm eating my sandwich, or I like am rushing to get somewhere I don't have time. Like those are kind of the reasons where someone will say no. And so, if you can be aware of that and recognize, is this a good time to ask them? That's also good. I had a crazy interaction where this guy like runs up to me and my friend. We were like talking to someone, is like, hey, I want to take your picture, hands his phone to this other person who was standing there and is like, oh, let's do it, let's pose, blah, blah. And then he made us like wait to like look at his phone. It was just so like, technically he asked us, but it was like so abrupt, so rude, like so sudden that like, don't be that guy. Like ask, wait for a response, don't assume things, all of that kind of stuff. And another one that I've seen recently is if you see someone taking a picture of someone else, don't photobomb them. Don't jump in their photo. Let them have their moment.
Good.
If you also want a photo, ask them if you can also take a photo, right? Like don't assume that just because they're taking a photo of one person, you can take a photo too. I feel like this is all very standard etiquette, and you would be surprised at how many people do not follow these basic rules and cannot like behave mindfully. Like it's kind of crazy.
Yeah. No, even I asked permission, but I didn't think about that last one where sometimes when you see somebody posing for a camera, like, oh, they're in, I'm taking a picture mode. So this is a good chance to go ahead and take a picture. But I didn't think about it like you should still also ask permission because that's
and you don't have to be super like I've had people who are like hold up their camera and are like, hey, and then I'll give them like a nod or something. It does not have to be super crazy formal, but that little like, hey, is this okay? I love those people. Those are my like friend, like those are my homies. Please do more of that. Like that is so helpful.
Yeah, it's how you interact with somebody on the street. You wouldn't just run up and like, I'm taking your picture now.
I wear J fashion all the time. You would be surprised how many people run up and take pictures of me on the street without asking. I'm just living my life. It is crazy how many people do that. Oh it's insane to me.
So rude.
Yeah.
Like, I know for me, like one time I was posing in my Misty cosplay with a friend already doing photo shoots with me. And then this other, like, you could tell this person was not part of the convention. It was one of the normal people passing by. And they just took pictures of me while I was doing the photo shoot. And I was like, letting them know, like, oh, can you like not do that? Hey, like, I could give you a better pose if you actually ask me and let me just give me a moment. So they said, oh, okay, yeah, like no worries. So I like finished that one pose with the photo shoot, and then I actually faced them and then posed for them, and then they're like, oh, okay, yeah, that's definitely like way better. Like, and I kind of just like let them know, like, hey, like I know like this is probably not something you come across all that much, but generally, if someone's dressing up, it's okay to ask, hey, can I take a picture of you? That way you get the best picture and not a weird creeper like, oh, like, why are you taking a picture of them? Why are you showing me this? Like, they're not even looking at you. Did you even get their consent?
There was a group doing a photo shoot at Fanime or at Second Anime, and I was just like, hey, can I get a picture of you guys? Like while they were doing the first shoot, and they were like, oh, can you like wait for us to take this picture and then we'll face you and blah blah. And I was like, yes, of course. So like I agree, that's like definitely the way to go, because sometimes they want to show their self, and then they gave me a beautiful photo. So like it's definitely better all around to always ask and always like listen to whatever they tell you, right? And I love the comment you made about socials too, because like so many people don't get, and it's hard. Like I'm not super great about getting social, so I don't post that many online. I just kind of take them for my own reference a lot of the time. But yeah, if the people who are like, oh, can I get your social and like write it down? Those people are great.
I'm the worst in our crew about it. I got to remember to do it. Thomas, one of our co-hosts, he's really good about like right away on top of it. And I'm like, oh man, I forgot. And so a lot of times I'm like, did you talk to, Captain Hook? I need to get that social so I can tag them properly and stuff like that. So I think as all our listeners are learning, there's a lot more to cosplay than just dressing up cool. There's a lot of effort and a lot of prep to it, and there's a lot of things to learn about how to approach cosplay as well. Is there any big conventions you guys got coming up that you want to make sure people can come and see you guys at?
Well, the two of us will be at ALA together.
Mhm.
That's Anime Los Angeles. That's in January. I already mentioned that my next con. Oh, I think this is before we started recording. My next con is going to be KimuraCon, which is in Portland. So if you are not in Sacramento and you want to come to that one, I'll be there. And then I think after that, the other big one kind of in the area is Fanime. I usually go to that one every year. I don't know. I think those are the big ones.
Ash, what about you?
Yeah. Definitely. Actually, I got a free badge to YumiCon, so
Nice.
I am still tentative. But I would like to say I am going, and in the off chance that something happens that I cannot, that thing that might happen, I'm not sure yet. But for now, I'm just going to say I am going, and then after
You're
that,
planning on it.
yeah, I'm planning on it. Yeah, and then
That one's coming up, right? That one's in October.
yeah, and then Anime Los Angeles with Elee. And depending on my
been to that one.
situation, I may or may not aim for Fanime. Yeah.
I need to go to LA because I've never been to that one. I've been to like Los Angeles Comic Con and different things like that down there, but not that one. And it sounds like it's a pretty big event.
It's so fun. I went for the first time last year and I had a blast. It quickly became one of my favorite cons. The big thing to know about Anime Los Angeles is they do ribbon trading there. So people will make these like, they're kind of like a post-it note. They're like
Awesome.
bad ribbons and they will design like custom ones and get them like printed and stuff. And I saw a guy who had so many badge ribbons on his badge that when he held it off of the second floor balcony, it touched the ground on the first floor.
Yes, we saw
The
that.
ribbon game there is crazy and it's so fun.
That alone got me sold. That is such a cool
Yeah.
practice to do.
And it's so nice. It's in Long Beach. It's in January, but it's LA, so the weather is like very mild, very nice, even in January. It's actually a 4-day convention, so it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So it's pretty long, which is cool. But yeah, super fun, great area. I had a ton of fun in it. And fingers crossed, hopefully you'll see me in the masquerade. I'm definitely going to be applying, and so we'll wait to see what the it's juried this year, so we have to see what the judges say on if I get in or not.
Well, we'll be able to keep up to date because everybody's going to follow you guys on social media. The links will be in the description. I know Ash, you're really good. Ash always posts like amazing cosplay, and I'm like, how did he do that? That's insane. I'm assuming you do the same thing, Elee?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And I actually taught Ash a lot of stuff he knows because I've been crafting my own for a really long time. But yeah, definitely follow me on Instagram. I do a lot of reels. I do a lot of posts. My partner, Stingray Photos, does almost all of my photos, and they're fantastic as well. So if you're looking for a cosplay photographer, definitely check them out. So yeah.
All right, head to the description, everybody. Start clicking around and following everything up. Thank you both of you so much for hanging out with me today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you too. Likewise.
Excellent.
Yeah, thanks so much.
That is it for Geek Freaks. That's all we have for you guys this week. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today, digging into all the news, and listening to the amazing Ash and Elee all about cosplay. As a reminder, we are giving away 5 copies of Halo Season 2 on Blu-ray. All you have to do is send me a picture of your review for any one of our podcasts. If you review multiple of them, that's multiple entries. Don't make me send you 5 copies of Halo Season 2. I'll do it. All right, guys. Have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next time.